Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here, WilhiteWX.com. Wanted to bring you a forecast update here. We've got a mess headed our way. This weekend, there's no doubt about it. The models have been pretty consistent. If you've been following me on my other social media channels on YouTube, or not YouTube, but Twitter and Facebook, you'll know that I've been sort of talking about this really since the weekend. But now it's time to start getting some videos out there and talking a little bit more about the pattern. For more frequent updates, again, be sure to follow me on @WilhiteWX on Twitter or Southern Indiana Weather on Facebook. So let's sort of talk about this. We've got a mess again headed our way. We've got some rain that's going to move through tomorrow, but that will be of really no consequence. It's in and out here pretty quickly. Then we have this little mess to deal with, where it looks like for much of us here in Southern Indiana and western and all of Kentucky, really, and Southern Illinois, going to be a rain going to snow kind of setup. So before we start getting into the specifics, let's just sort of talk about what we know and what we don't know right now. Notice there's some rain starting to move here onto the coast of California. Let me turn the satellite on here, and you'll see there is our storm. That's what is going to start this whole bloody mess coming in. There's a big low pressure system here. Remember, winds rotate counterclockwise, and so if you were to see the upper level energy on here, what you'll see is this little piece of area right in here is going to go in like this. That's going to rotate on shore tomorrow, and so as this all comes on shore here tomorrow, it'll get into our upper air network. We'll be able to get weather balloons up into there to collect data and not have just interpretations from satellites. It's helpful, does good, but it does much better when you get actual real data in there, live pressure data as the weather balloon goes up into the atmosphere. That will help our models to be much improved, and so from tomorrow night on, I think the models will start to agree a little bit better, and I think we'll start to get a little bit more of a storm track. But that's where it is right now. It's coming on shore, and again, once that comes on shore, well, then I think we'll start to see things getting a little bit better as that. So then what happens then once it comes on shore? Well, let me sort of illustrate this for you. Basically what happens is this low spins off a piece of energy down here, and it'll sort of go in like this. What's going to happen is it's going to come over the front range of the Rockies, and it's going to sort of spawn a new low here. Eventually, it's going to eject out this way. There are questions on whether it goes here more of a southerly track like this, or whether it sort of takes more of an angle like this. That top is the one that's been preferred by most of the modeling, but there are some hints of a more southern track. That's something hopefully over the next 24 hours we can start to so hopefully something there that we can start to fine-tune a little bit. Now, as I show you the Euro here, again, this starts off by Saturday morning. You've got lead bands of snow coming here into central and northern Illinois, northern Indiana. You've got rain starting to break out here, and what you're going to see is that most of the modeling breaks rain out from I-70 on southward here in Indiana. Pretty much all of the bluegrass state there seeing rain, a good chunk of southern Illinois seeing rain from this as well. As you go through the afternoon, it's still cold rain there. You've got some snow going on up towards the north. But then as the low pressure starts to pull away a little bit, that rain will start to transition over to snow. But in between there, you've probably got a band of some sort of an icy precipitation, whether that's freezing rain or whether that's sleet, whether that's a combination of both. That's very possible. I don't think this is going to be a very clean transition. I think it's going to be a pretty nasty transition to that, unfortunately. And as that works its way through, eventually we'll all go to snow on sort of the back side of this. But again, it's going to be a messy transition for it to take place. Now, the GFS is a little bit different. I'm using the FV3, which is the new replacement to the GFS. That's supposed to have gone operational in February. Due to the government shutdown, that'll probably be delayed a little bit, but it's done a pretty decent job. And actually, the FV3 this week has been the most consistent. The Euro has actually been pretty erratic in its storm path, but the FV3, I got to give credit where credit is due. It's been pretty decent. This may be something that's a little bit closer to reality, so let me put it into motion. Again, by the time you approach 6 a.m. Central Time here Saturday morning, you don't have anything going on here, just starting to move into the area. And again, you notice as I go through this, it's a rainmaker south of I-70. Very similar to the Euro on this. But it's beefier with the sleet and freezing rain mixing kind of totals that you see on here. And you see some decent heavy snow bands lands up here as well, a little heavier than what the Euro had in some areas. And then as the low pulls away again, you've got a pretty wide swath of transition to an icy mess before it goes to snow on the backside. In this solution, pretty much all of us would see snow. We would see rain going to some ice and then going to some snow, but it's a question then of just how much can accumulate. One more just really quickly to note that the NAM is now starting to see it in its runs today, but I just caution this far out. The NAM, usually not very good. Here's some showers that roll through the area tomorrow. That's that first wave. And then here it comes. Here's your early Saturday morning. But you notice this looks a lot less juiced up than what you see the other models. And again, NAM not in its prime this far out, really showing that. Here you go, and showing a pretty weak low overall. And watch this as it passes through. Dry slots southern Indiana and Kentucky out and doesn't really change anything over here. Now that, I suppose, could happen, but it's probably not a very likely solution. Likely the NAM is just not in its prime. And so I say that in an effort to show you the wide variations in the data. And I think tomorrow we'll start to be able to dial this in, hopefully a little bit more soon. The NAM, again, dry slots us here in southern Indiana and Kentucky. Doesn't really give us much of anything. The significant precipitation up to your north. The FV3, again, the one that's been the most significant. This is what it shows for snows around the area. This is not a mega snowstorm on it, but there are some pretty decent totals, especially as you go towards the north up here in northern Indiana and even out in southern Illinois. I'm still a little skeptical about these. I don't think it's got the right totals on here, but I like the placement that it has on here so far. The Canadian is in a very similar issue with this, and so you can kind of see that. Euro is the one that's the further south with this, and you notice that it's got some even a swath of 4 and 5 inch totals here through the Bluegrass State, going up to 8, 9, 10 plus inches as you get here towards near Cincinnati, northern Kentucky, and on up from there. But it's very erratic, and just to kind of illustrate for you just how erratic this has been, let me just pull up the Euro here and kind of help maybe give you a little bit more of a picture for that if I possibly can, if I can get this thing to pull up and do right like I'm supposed to here. All right, so this is the Euro, the current run of the Euro. One run prior showed this. Notice the big difference in that? That's a huge southward shift. But watch this. In the day prior to that, look how far north it was, and a run prior to that. And then here are some runs prior to that and the run prior to this. And so there you go. So I've got 7 runs on here, and let me just put it into motion again. So this was the run that was initialized a few days ago. And then watch this. It just sort of shifted north. Now it's starting to shift back to the south again. But you notice the wide variation in totals here. And the model has just really been kind of erratic. Let me show you what the FV3 model is doing. Maybe that'll help you out a little bit. Here's the current run of the FV3, and then here was last night's. Here was yesterday morning, and then you start going back in time a little bit, and you see it was a little heavier there as well. But again, there's the earliest of the runs that I've got downloaded here. Another one, and then here you are to what it currently shows. So, yes, the totals have varied on here, but you notice overall the placement has been pretty consistent, whereas the placement on the Euro has not been that consistent. The placement on the FV3 has been pretty consistent, which makes me possibly buy into it a little bit more. Again, here's what the FV3 showed. Rain going to snow south of I-70 with a mix of that icy precipitation in there, going to some snow and maybe some decent snows. Now, I will say this. Whenever you get a rain going to snow setup around here in southern Indiana and Kentucky area, and typically we don't get much snow with that, folks. That's usually a 1 to 3 inch at best kind of setup for us when we get rain going to snow. There's some rare circumstances where that could be higher than that, but that's just the norm around here. So I think those totals are going to adjust down. I really don't think that this is going to be a mega snowstorm for most of southern Indiana south of I-70. I think it's going to be a little bit more north of there before you start to get into those decent totals. Now, as you get towards Cincinnati and onward, that may be a different story. You notice that this storm really starts to juice up as it pulls away. What's happening here is that you've got a dip in the jet stream sort of going off down here. You can get the low moving off down here, and they're not really marrying together, but once the low starts to get over to here, it starts to phase up with this northern branch a little bit more. That really amps it up as the storm system starts to move up into here, and so that's why you notice on some of the data that you have higher totals than here too. But I would also caution you whenever you see such hefty snow totals on some of these maps for like Cincinnati and beyond. Notice that on many of these maps, you're getting some pretty significant chunk of ice in here as well. And most snow maps like that I would show you, for example, this shows some decent snow totals over here as well. The Euro showing some heavy snow totals as well. Most of these do not distinguish between precipitation types. So all wintry precipitation, whether it's freezing rain, sleet, or snow, usually just sort of thrown into the majority of these snow maps, and that's going to skew the totals off on these. So what you see is actually really not what you get in there. You have to sort of do some math to figure out there. Now here's one more thought of what I'm thinking here. I've shown this on my social media, but just to give you an idea, and I know I really wish I would have made this a different color. I regretted it after I had posted it, but that's the way life goes. But here's the state of Indiana. It's kind of hard to see right here, but just gives you a rough idea where Indiana is, and then here's the state of Kentucky over in here. That kind of, and then there's Ohio, and then Illinois kind of going up in this general direction right here. So that gives you a rough idea of what to expect. But basically, south of I-70, really expect that this is mostly going to be a rain going to some snow setup. I think the warm air advection is going to invade us, and it's going to be more of a rain kind of setup. Again, the Euro has tried to transition this a little bit more to the south. We'll see if that's a trend. Now, if all the data starts to go towards the Euro tomorrow, okay, I'd rather have snow than rain personally, rain going to snow and ice mixed with it. I'd rather just be in the snow and have no ice with it. But I don't see that right now. This is the most likely scenario to me as it plays out right now. Of course, tomorrow, whenever I'm recording my next video, things may be a little bit different. For what it's worth, the ensemble data sees the heaviest of the snow still here, more up towards the north. There are some individual members here, this one brings it more down to the south. So does this one here. This one here a little bit more. But you see, by and large, the majority of them, this one definitely is further south, but the majority of them more on a northerly track here as you go from that. Now, the other big thing that we want to look at with this will be the temperatures as well. And so just to sort of give you an idea of where we're going to end up with on Saturday, just take a look at the temperature gradient that you got here. We're 59 in Nashville, 43 up in Louisville, and then 32 up in Indy. That's a pretty steep excuse me, it's a pretty steep temperature gradient as you go up, and the temperatures are going to crash fast on Saturday behind this. And so we'll start off here reasonably warm, certainly warm enough for rain, but then watch as we go into the overnight hours, that front just digs through. And so you're going from temperatures near 50 on Saturday afternoon in extreme southern Indiana all the way down to temperatures in the teens. Now, what's that going to do? Well, if you got water ponding on the roadways and things like that, then you're going to end up having a flash freeze out of that. And so even if it doesn't snow significant amounts, what you have sort of standing around on the roadways could end up flash freezing as a result of that. Then if you combine that with a little bit of sleet or possibly freezing rain before it transitions over to maybe a light snow for the area out of this, you could end up with a real mess on the road. So it won't take, 10 inches of snow to make this be a messy situation. Even in the area where it's rain going to mix and then to snow, it certainly can be a pretty big hazard for the roadways. And then we're going to get some really cold air, by the way, into that as you go into Monday morning. Let me get this back up here. By the time you go into Monday morning, data suggests that some folks with a heavier snowpack certainly go below zero here. But even into southern Indiana, you're talking single digits and teens. So we're going to get some extremely cold air coming in behind this. And that's, it's going to get cold next week. And I hope you like snow because it's just a parade of clippers, one right after another after this. So there our storm goes on Saturday, and watch this. Here the next system comes in, sort of a low from up towards the south here for around Thursday. That might be a rain going to snow too. And then there's a clipper behind it, followed by another clipper, followed by another one, followed by, another one there. And so every one of these, some may go to a north, some may go angled down here. It's just too far out to tell, but it's just going to be one system after another and just cold shot after cold shot coming our way. One final thing, it's going to get awful windy this weekend as well. And so you won't notice it as much. You'll see some winds starting in advance of this low on Saturday as it moves through some breezy conditions here but the real wind is going to kick in as the low pushes away and starts to move in here. That's where you're going to start to see wind speeds rotating around here for good 20 to 25 mile per hour sustained winds at times. So that's going to certainly blow some things over. Now, that could help dry the roadway off if the temperatures hadn't crashed as much. But by the time the wind is coming, that's when the temperatures are already crashing. So there's a chance that a lot of this could already be freezing out there before the major winds start to come in. That's something that we're just going to have to see. But in general, the way it looks right here, the early ideas, it's going to be an absolute mess. Heavy snow to the north, rain to snow here to the south. But either one of these is going to cause some pretty slick roadways, folks. That's it for this video update. I'll have another one for you tomorrow. Again, we get better data coming in tomorrow, so hopefully that will help us out a little bit. Be sure to follow me here on social media at WillHiteWX on Twitter, Southern Indiana Weather on Facebook.